Hey, I'm Evan Reese, co-founder of Fractal, a Nashville-based product development firm. Um, we do industrial design, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and so what that means is we can take a design all the way from concept to manufacturing, which I find really gratifying. So today I'm really excited to share my sketching process and how I use sketching in the bigger picture of getting something made. Let's jump in. All right, so right off the bat, um, I think of drawing as another language. It's a way for you to communicate. And as a designer, when you're making stuff, you need to be able to communicate 3D forms in a quick conversational way. So that's what sketching mainly is for me. Um, One thing I do like to point out is that design drawing isn't really art in the fine art sense. It's more about getting your idea across, and if it looks bad but it gets the idea across, it's a lot more valuable than if it looks great but it doesn't communicate. So focusing on that first is really the key. The other thing that I really want to reiterate, because I'm imagining a lot of people watching this video are students maybe just starting out, and yeah, so you can learn how to draw. It's just how you can learn a language, you can learn it. I don't know whether or not people have innate skill from childhood, but I think by the time you're in college, other factors such as your drive to figure it out are a lot more important. So regardless of whether or not some people are born better at it, by now it kind of doesn't matter. Um, so why draw? This is really important. If you don't, like, if you're holding a pen and you're making marks on the paper, but you don't know what you want the page to do after you're done, then you should stop and figure that out. You're wasting time. So there's a lot of different reasons and functions for a sketch, and I'm going to go through some of my top ones. But your sketch should match the purpose. You need to design the experience of the person viewing the sketch. So if it's just going to be shown to another designer, you can probably do it quicker. Or if your client wants to show it to investors, you need to do a lot different kind of a drawing that's maybe clearer and also fancier. So thinking about the experience of the people viewing the sketch is really key. So let's go through some of my favorite reasons to draw. The first one is for me personally to explore my own ideas and then maybe communicate those internally to a team. So these were a whole bunch of cell phone case concepts that I did. I would say all of these together took maybe 8 hours or so. And anyone who has experience with CAD will understand that you just can't explore this many ideas any other way than sketching. So you're not going to do this in 8 hours in CAD. So sketching is the quickest way to get ideas out and communicate them to other people. Sort of a different kind of exploration is also to use sketching to find shapes you couldn't think of. So this helmet concept is not something that I could just sit and close my eyes and think really hard and come up with this. So it's all about using sketching to stimulate the parts of your brain, especially that try to make sense of abstraction. So the same part of your brain you're using when you're looking at clouds and you're squinting at them and you see animals or something like that. So what I did for this is just threw a couple marks down real loose, and then you do back up and kind of squint at it and see what starts jumping out, and then you can accentuate that or keep building and building and building, and eventually get to something like this, which again I don't even know if I would say I thought of this. I developed this. So it's not something that I could just go and do. So sketching is really great for that form finding. Another reason to sketch is to clarify ambiguous stuff. If I was going to try to describe this printer to you with words, it probably wouldn't work very well. I mean, it's kind of a shiny box, and it's got this corner thing that kind of protrudes up, and that's where we're going to put the display. It's at like about 45 degrees and all that. And even if everyone in the room thinks they know what you're talking about, they don't. they're all picturing something different. It's like if you've ever read a novel and then they make it into a movie, and everything and everyone in the movie looks completely different than what you'd imagined. And it's not because the author is a bad author, it's just because it's not the right media to communicate this kind of thing. So sketching is the way to do it. Reason number 4 is to basically sell and impress people. So that's, as industrial designers, we all want our ideas to live and move forward. Usually if you're working in a team, there are a lot of ideas being thrown around, and it's often not the best idea that moves forward. It's the idea that was best understood. So being able to clearly show it and make it shiny can really help your ideas move forward and be made into actual things. And something else I'd like to add is that I've done several sketches for people to go and try to raise money for their concept. So it's not just about impressing people on your team and making your ideas live, but it can actually be really valuable to a client to have an impressive looking sketch to bring to a meeting. It's often the most affordable way to show a lot of progress on a project. So doing an impressive sketch can be really valuable to clients. Another thing with sketching that's really great is it forces you to observe more closely in a way that you couldn't do by just looking at something. So bicycle proportions are notoriously tricky, I think, when you're just starting out especially. So it was a good way for me to learn, how many wheels long is a bicycle and how many wheels high is the seat and that kind of thing, and get the proportions figured out. And now I've got that, like in my head, and I've learned it. But by the way, this page is kind of a silly page if I was actually trying to design a bike. Bikes are pretty much flat, and if I was designing one from scratch, which I have actually had an electric bike project lately, which is pretty dreamy, it's pretty much all side views. I mean, maybe there's a feature you need to figure out in perspective, but for the most part, anything but a side view is probably a waste of time. But to improve on sketching or to observe, to help me observe bikes, this is a great sketch page. And then reason 6 is to have fun. So if you don't love sketching, you probably won't put in the effort that it takes to get good at it. And I don't know, I think it will make your entire career as a designer more challenging if you don't love sketching. So that out of the way, I do like to get a little bit more technique, but I'm not going to get into like construction techniques or anything, but just some high level concepts that can help improve anybody's sketching. So the first one, and this is the tip. Proportion is everything. So everything that you do in your sketch should pretty much be in support of getting the right proportions. For this slide, I just took a image of a car and traced it. So I tried to trace it super tidy and clean, but warped it in Photoshop afterward. And then I did another one where I was trying to be as loose as I possibly could, but still tracing it. And you can imagine which of these sketches would actually be useful to a car manufacturer. Another interesting thing about proportion is, some products have a very loose proportion, like they could be a lot of different shapes and still work. And then there's other ones that are really closely tied to the proportion. And I think basically the difficulty of drawing an object is directly correlated to how important the proportions are. So things like faces and hands and cars and bicycles are all really hard to draw because a tiny tweak in the proportions makes them look funny. Whereas something like a vase or a beanbag chair or like a backpack doesn't matter as much. They can be a lot of different shapes and still be like a valid backpack. So knowing how precise the proportions have to be for what you're currently drawing is an important thing. In support of getting good proportions, you should draw it light till you get it right. That's, I guess I heard Spencer Nugent say that first. What a guy. But yeah, so don't try to nail it. Like if you if you just try to nail the correct line, especially as you're starting out sketching, maybe once you got a lot of muscle memory and experience, then you'll be better doing that. But it's okay for it to be messy. If it gets too messy, just throw another page on top or add another layer in Photoshop and trace yourself. Just trace it up. Keep going. The next one is, and this is pretty different than a lot of people's fine art training and from high school or whatever. But you want to think about the shape as a 3D object. So on the left, the wine bottle, I was drawing it just based on looking at a photo of a wine bottle and trying to copy the silhouette in 2D, which is great for fine art and for reproducing things you have an image of or things like that. But it's not useful if you want to do something from your imagination or you need to modify the design in some way. So the image on the right, I wasn't using any reference. I was just using what I understand about the 3D shape of a wine bottle, and then you can spin it around and change it in any way you want. So for people making stuff from scratch, it's really important to be able to think in 3D and sketch in 3D and not think about it as a flat shape. The fourth tip is I've seen a lot of especially when I started out, I also made this mistake a lot where I would I wouldn't understand what's important and what's not in the object, and it can be really easy to spend a lot of time doing a little perforated pattern or detailing out a logo or something like that when it's really not. It's not the core of what the sketch is doing. So again, thinking about the purpose of the sketch, and then I guess focusing on getting that done and leaving everything else, like having as little of everything else as possible. So yeah, you can see, obviously, we've all seen wheels. They all have spokes, but I don't need to show every single one. And the other thing with this is if I was going to go and try and draw every single spoke, I'd probably get it wrong. So I basically avoided making that mistake by just indicating it anyway. So it can be a good way to make your sketches actually look cleaner because there are fewer mistakes because you just skipped that part. And this is my final tip, and I hesitated to include this one, but I think it's really important to talk about. And not sure if people will agree or not, but in my mind, again, thinking back to the purpose of your sketch, you don't need to do everything from scratch. So if I have a client that's paying me by the hour, you better believe they're going to want me to do everything I can to speed up and get a better result faster. So, car proportions are pretty similar. Like if you're trying to do a car and you've never done one before, might not be a bad idea to get some kind of underlay going. It doesn't have to be tracing a photo of a car. It could be just getting the wheelbase in Rhino or something like that. But it can be a really helpful tool. Or even if I'm doing a fairly simple product that has a fixed proportion, I'll make a block in CAD and use that as an underlay because there's no point, no benefit me thinking about the proportions of the object every single time and trying to construct that by sketching. So could I do it? Yes, but does it make sense? No, it doesn't. So I would recommend doing what it takes to get the job done and make sure that your sketch is accomplishing its task. Now that said, if the purpose of your sketch is to teach you how to sketch, then there's no shortcut. You just have to practice and you do it. And if you are doing something for school or something like that, and you're the only person you're cheating is yourself in that case. So obviously, and you don't want to plagiarize and all of that. So, but the main thing is I'm not too proud to use an underlay or do anything it takes to get the sketch done as fast and as good as possible. Okay, that's it. Hopefully you found that useful and picked up at least one or two things that you can incorporate into your own work to make your sketches more effective. If you want to get in touch, I'm on Instagram, and you can also follow Fractal on Instagram. I'll put up a slide right after this. Thanks for watching. Bye.